This is the story of Jenny Lee, an amazing racehorse whose career spanned the late 1940s and early 50s when quarter horse racing experienced its greatest popularity in Victoria County. A.M. Junior Grow was the owner, trainer, and jockey of Jenny Lee.
She just ran two races when she was really physically able to run, you know, as a 3 or 4 year old. And then we raised two colts out of her, Texas Lee and Baby Lee. And then we put her back in training. Everybody thought it was so silly. She was about 9 or 10 years old then, see, and that's the year we ran her a couple of times and we'd won with her. And then the following year we took her up, and we'd always run at the best in the country, you know. Anything that was nobody else wanted any part of, we'd wind up with them with Jenny Lee, you know, and send them back home talking to themselves.
Jenny Lee lost only one race in her life, that to George Parr's La Panchita at Skidmore. 2 weeks later, the race was rematched at the Adler track on the Refugio Highway. A.R. Hartman was the race judge that day.
George Parr, that was the days where he was in big money, you know. And he had a suitcase full of money. If there was $10 in there was $100,000 in that suitcase. And the least bet that you could take was $100. They wouldn't fool with you with less than that. And anywheres on up from that, don't you see? They wouldn't put up the money. All they'd do is they'd book your name down with the amount of money that you said you was going to bet. So a horse was getting ready to go up to the gate, you know.
In the next segment, the race. Dennis Tardon, 19 Eyewitness News.
Misfortune that day, the mare slipped in the gate and got a bad start, and then we ran it over 2 weeks later.
So on Sunday, August 19, 1951, the race was rematched at the Adler track. A.R. Hartman was the race judge and the track announcer that day.
Gate flew open, and Junior reached back there with about 1 or 2 raps like this, you know, to get that mare going. And then he got down and got the reins like this, and he was just pulling her, holding her back, and she was shaking her head like this and whipping her tail from one side to the other, trying to run, and he was trying to keep her from winning too far, don't you see? And then they come out there, and she beat him, I guess, 2 daylights even at that, don't you see? And George Parr and Ernie Lane, they were up there on the judge's stand with me, and they had their watches, you know, and getting the time, and they walked on down track, and I followed them down there, and they was looking at their watches, and George Parr said, "I'll run them over for $50,000. Ernie Lane told him, he said, "George, you got the money. Now, if you want to throw it away," he says, "that's your business." But he says, "I don't want any part of her with Miss Princess." Mr. Lane owned Miss Princess. She held the world track record at quarter-mile.
The wagering on the race was heavy.
Well, my guess would be anywhere from $50,000 to $100,000 because they thanked us, just like he said, they had a suitcase full of money and they had a bunch of it left, and they thanked us after the race that we didn't have more money to bet them.
Both the Adler and the Reno tracks closed in the mid-50s, and quarter horse racing moved southwest to Goliad, but not before leaving indelible hoof prints on the lore of Victoria County. Dennis Tardon, 19 Eyewitness News.